Let's go to South Australia now and catch up with the Liberal Senator for South Australia, Alex Antic. Thanks for joining us, Alex. Your state government there and Stephen Marshall got absolutely trounced on Saturday. Why?
Well, thanks, Chris. And yeah, I'm sorry to say that's very accurate and a very good summary in your intro there. Look, like you, I'm sad to say I just wasn't that surprised. I spent my time campaigning, but I kept hearing the same thing in the months leading up to the election, which was simply that people had checked out from the Liberal government in this state as for its ability to speak for them. I kept hearing it from business leaders that they had been upset as early as 6 months into the campaign with the increase in land tax, which was probably the only thing I think you missed in the intro there. This series of events which have offended our core base in this state, the sort of facilitation of this egregious social policy regime, even down to the loss of the Clipsal 500, and then the thumbing their nose at Christians joining the party, many of whom I think were out in force to actually try and save this government in an ironic twist after the event. So, look, I think you have to boil this down to one thing, and that is the old saying that President Ronald Reagan of the United States made in the 1980s. It said that it's so important in life as in politics to know why it is you are somewhere and to support those who supported you. He used the term dance with the one that brung you. Unfortunately, the Liberal government in this state in the last 4 years arrived at the date with Liberal voters and then has spent most of the night trying to get Labor and Green voters onto the dance floor. And that's never worked before. It should never work again. We're now entering a period in this state where we need to see generational change in the Liberal Party, and that needs to begin today, if not 5 p.m. Saturday.
Just let's talk about the pandemic, because a lot of people have talked about how opening the borders and allowing people to get it, some levels of infection and death has been the problem for Stephen Marshall. But I see it rather differently. That is, he has really stoked the fear and paranoia, and for so long, like Mark McGowan, tried to run a zero COVID state. So he's made people very, very frightened of the virus. That's why they're still frightened, some of them in South Australia, now that the disease is there. He created very unrealistic expectations, and then he was the master of the timing. He delayed he says he opened up earlier than other states, but he could have had his border open much earlier and be dealing with these issues months before the election instead of during the campaign.
Yeah, look, I think that's right, Chris. We spent the previous 2 years trying to remind people why it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and ultimately, that fear just seeped into the community. I agree. I think one of the things that the Premier did very well was to open up, and I would have done it a lot earlier had it been me. But we almost became a little bit half pregnant in this state. As a result, I think, of handing over the reins to the bureaucracy, which in my view was another mistake from the early days. We then found ourselves, I think, politically in no man's land, where the bureaucracy then threw up the hands when a case predictably emerged and said, right, well, we're back to density limits and all these sorts of things. So look, I do. I think there were other ways of handling that, but I think that really started from April 2020 when the Emergency Management Act was first enacted. It is never a good idea to give bureaucrats unreserved and unrivaled powers in the manner in which happened in state parliament in this. I could
not agree more. It's just staggered daily to see the Chief Health Officer and Police Commissioner running the state. I mean, why have a government? Why have a Premier if that's what you're going to do? Just very briefly, though, as you know, the Liberal Party works best when its Liberal strands and Conservative strands cooperate together. Has South Australia effectively dispensed with that, alienated the Conservatives like yourself, and it's just dominated by moderates, and that's part of the problem here?
Well, look, Chris, in the last, all my time pretty much in this party, I've tried to ring the bell on some of these issues and remind the party that we are the party of Robert Menzies, the party of freedom of thought, religion and association. So I've spent a lot of time doing that. I think there has been an element of disenfranchising people like myself from that process. I'm not alone. There's been many. There were no Conservatives in Cabinet in the last couple of years. That is a very big mistake. It's never a good idea in government. John Howard showed how you can manage those forces of the broad church very well. We need to be the party of the city, but also the party of the country. This state needs to get over Liberal parties trying to build monuments like we were to vanity and try to get back to having a statewide focus on everyday people, the quiet South Australians, rather than focusing on trying to be like them. We're not the Labor Party, we're not the Australian Greens, and we've got to stop allowing people inside this party to tell us that we are. Thanks, Chris. Good on you.